It's my pleasure to be supporting a couple of fine PPC candidates in Lanark, Frontenac, and Kingston, and in Leeds, Grenville, and the Thousand Islands, as well as the PPC and Maxime Bernier, because it's very clear to me, and I think everybody here understands the danger that our country is in. We all can connect the dots. We can all see what has happened over the last 17, now approaching 18 months. This is not ever going to end, and it's going to get worse unless we stand up and fix it. Right? And I don't want to be too dark about this, but it is dark. And we saw that this week, that an even more outrageous undertaking happened this week. Quietly on Tuesday night, Doug Ford modified the Reopening Ontario Act. And as bad as it was prior to Tuesday night, where the public health units had far too much authority over our lives, he gave them even more authority without legislative oversight. And he quietly changed the rules to allow public health units to make any order, to provide any recommendation, provide any advice, and that any violation of that advice or recommendations would constitute an offense under the provincial offenses, under the Reopening Ontario Act, with various fines starting at $1,000 and going up to $1 million. Right? So that's advice or a recommendation, if you don't follow it, is now an offense in Ontario. And we saw the public health units immediately jumped on that new authority. Immediately. Yesterday, first in Peel Region, outside of Toronto, Peel Region announced that they would be instituting a vaccine passport for their region if the province didn't do it. Later yesterday afternoon, Ottawa Public Health said they're going to institute a vaccine passport. And none of us want to believe what is happening to our country. We can see what's happening, but we don't want to believe it's true. This is all about apparently a virus that 99.97% of the people fully recover from. That 80% of the people who are supposedly COVID positive don't even know they are supposed to be sick. They've got this new term that they coined last year called asymptomatic. When I was a little kid, we used to say asymptomatic people were healthy people, right? But now they're asymptomatic. So I'm not sure just how far they will go. But they've gone too far already. And I'll say, as Justin Trudeau said last week, and don't believe politicians, first off, okay? That's number one. And don't believe their words, believe their actions. That's number two. A couple of months ago, Justin Trudeau said there will be no mandatory vaccines in this country. And last week, he identified that he was going to make it a requirement for the federal public service to be vaccinated to stay employed with the federal public service and federally regulated industries. He also said people who are not vaccinated will be too dangerous to go and travel on a train or a plane. So if you've got a loved one in some other part of the country or in another country, you will be too risky and too dangerous to go on that train or plane. And one can only, it doesn't take too much. Do the deductive steps here. If you're too dangerous to be on a train or a plane, you will also be too dangerous to be in a supermarket or in a restaurant or in a school or in a hospital. Like, you're too risky. There is no other way that plays out, is if you're too dangerous to be on a train, you're going to be too dangerous to be anywhere in our society. And Doug Ford 3 weeks ago said there'll be no mandatory vaccines in Ontario. And then, of course, he's made it mandatory for all our universities, all our healthcare workers to have a vaccine. And indeed, one of his very own caucus members, who finally found the gumption to stand up and not take the vaccine, got kicked out of caucus. Aaron O'Toole, who said he is opposed to mandatory vaccines, last week kicked out two conservative candidates. One was from the Yukon. The other one was from Fort Mac, Uradega, who spoke out against mandatory vaccines. And he kicked them out of the campaign. That's his actions, which betray his words. And there is no end in sight, except that we have a political option to this political crisis now. And thankfully, the first time I would say that Justin Trudeau has done anything positive or worthwhile in his life, he has called an election for September 20th. And it's clear to me, all the major parties are on one side advocating for mandatory vaccines, further restrictions, further lockdowns, vaccine passports, and taking away your freedom. And then we have one party, one national party, one national leader who is for freedom, who is opposed to mandatory vaccines, who's opposed to further lockdowns, and that's Maxime Bernier and the PPC Party of Canada.